Hello, and welcome to the April edition of the Cinetopia radio show and podcast. I'm Amanda from Cinetopia, and on this month's show, we're diving into 3 films that each unfold in their own distinct world. First, The Drama, a new dramedy starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson, already generating conversation around its central twist. Then, Project Hail Mary, a science fiction story built around a deeply unexpected relationship at its core. And finally, Rose of Nevada, where Mark Jenkin takes Callum Turner and George MacKay out to sea in a quietly uncanny time-looping mystery. Alongside our reviews, we're also delighted to be joined by Mark Jenkin himself, a BAFTA-winning filmmaker whose work has become one of the most distinctive voices in contemporary British cinema. We'll be sitting down with him to talk about Rose of Nevada, his creative process, the ideas and influences that shape his filmmaking, and how the film sits alongside his earlier work as part of a Cornish trilogy. It's a varied program this month, including a look at our Fiends and the Furrows Folk Horror Festival. Do join us for a full and wide-ranging episode. Hello, and welcome to the April edition of the Cinetopia radio show and podcast. I'm Amanda, your host, and we've taken a little bit of a break because things have been crazy busy for us. We just announced that we're started a new folk horror film festival in Leith, so that's been on our mind, and we've been running a whole bunch of stuff around live musical scores across Scotland as well. But luckily, we're all back here and we're getting ready for this film festival. And I'm here with 2 of our regulars, and great to see you both. It's Kat and Mariana. So, Kat, how have you been since we've last chatted? Well, I guess it was last year you've been on the show, right?
I think so. Yeah. I seem to remember something in January, but I don't think that's correct. But yeah, it's been a busy one as well. I started teaching at the university for the first time, so that was fun. But yeah, that just made it all that much busier. But what was great about it was watching the films every week, the kind of, the stuff that the students would have to have seen. And that was actually really good. It was nice to be in the habit of seeing a film every single week just to kind
Yeah.
of refresh my brain. So that was amazing. So it was a good time, but a busy time.
So, you're teaching film studies at.
So it's just a course part of it's an undergraduate course that they're kind of doing
Mm.
because there is no kind of film studies dedicated program just yet for undergraduate students. So it's kind of like a common course they call it. So students who are on different degrees can take it out of kind of interest. So it's good, yeah. It's kind of interesting to speak to people who are not kind of deep in film studies either, and they're just kind of interested in a variety of films. So yeah, that's been great. And the course is called Introduction to European Cinema. So a lot of kind of close to home stuff, which is good.
What's the highlight of a film that you're screening or you got to watch?
Um, well, do you know what? Just because I've been kind of thinking about it, but I remember doing a review of La Chimera for Cinetopia a few years ago when
Yeah.
it came out, and I remember watching it in the cinema, and I remember really disliking it. And then I watched it again for the teaching, and I was like, this is a great film. Like I don't know what it was that just didn't quite chime with me at the time, but I think sometimes it's worth rewatching stuff. So yeah, that was a nice reminder. And then to be honest, everything else was just great from like Bergman to kind of French or Italian kind of neorealism stuff. Yeah. Yeah. There wasn't really anything that I didn't particularly enjoy. So that's always a win.
Well, that's great. And yeah, I'm glad you've changed your mind on La Chimera. I saw a trailer the other day and I was like, this is why I love Josh O'Connor so much now. It's because
Yeah.
of this film, and it still brings back. I need to see it again too because I think I'll love it even more. Mariana, good to see you. How are you?
Hello, good to see you again. Yeah, I'm good. Uh, I have actually been on the other end of not watching as many films as I wish I was because I've fallen into a TV hole. Basically, I'm just watching the Borgias and trying to catch up on like stuff that I haven't seen before, like industry and all that. But um, I've I haven't really been doing a lot of film watching, but I've been trying to get into my physical media collection. I've got like 90 DVDs that I haven't seen, and I'm trying to chip into that with moderate to low success. but try my best. And outside of that, I'm just, fighting with wasps that are trying to get into my flat, and that's
These
it,
are so
really.
funny. At this period of
Yeah.
time, they do, don't they? But yeah, no, I'm also been watching a lot of television. Probably not the same television that you have. I have a weird, I have a weird obsession with reality television, and but I would also say I have watched Industry. So I watched the last series of Industry. So were you enjoying that, or?
I'm on episode 7 of season 1.
Oh, right.
It takes
Okay.
me about 3 days between each episode to recenter myself and my nervous system because it's so stressful.
It is very
But
stressful.
I am enjoying it. I watched Dead Man's Wire, and Michaela, she's in it, and
Mm.
that's kind of why I was like, oh, I should watch Industry because she's good in this film. So I'll watch her in that. And then, as everybody else in the world, I've been obsessed with Heated Rivalry,
Yeah.
which is why, and Francois Arnault is the love of my life, and I'm watching The Borgias because of him, and it's actually quite good. So there you go. But yeah.
Well, when you join us for our festival, you can you can chat with Emma, who I think you were on the last podcast with, who is one of the biggest Heated Rivalry fans. As I guess when you watch it and you love it,
Yeah.
you become a super
It
fan.
rewires your brain, basically. I read the book.
I have not even gotten that far yet. Kat, have you seen Heated Rivalry?
We watched the first episode, and so far I've heard great things, and I have friends who loved it, and I think they were like, just get through the first few episodes because it is.
It did take till episode 3 to really get properly into it, so I get it.
Yeah.
Until
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
oh, isn't it? And then I was like, oh, never mind. My brain is now just hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's tricky. I think it's funny with TV shows. I think you do have to give them a bit of time, but I think it is worth it. One of the shows that we gave it our time and that was really worth it was Shogun, which I think is now what, like a year or two old. But that was honestly one of the best like TV series I've seen ever, I think. And it was definitely one of those where I kind of refused to watch any more episodes after episode 1 because it's so brutal, and I really felt that it was unnecessary. But actually, by kind of episode 2, by the middle of it, you're like, okay, now we're into the politics and into the characters, and that was a great show. And we did it where we watched one episode per week, and actually staggering it that way, the kind of old school way, if you will, really made it worth it. And I think I'm gonna try and do that more with, if it's like reality TV, it's not quite the same thing. But if it's like big long hour episodes, I think it's really worth it. It's kind of like when Severance came out and they were kind of staggering it with the release as well, trying to push people to not binge it. I think it's well worthwhile. So that was really interesting, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
how
have. Oh,
that's how I'm gonna approach TV now as well. I agree. Just staggering like week by week.
yeah.
It feels easier to digest everything and not like, ooh.
Yeah, I feel like I can't do that because don't have that personality. If it's in front of me, I will watch it all night long. And yeah, I binged that John Hamm show. I binged Euphoria actually, like in January as well, because I was, yeah, at this stage I was like, everybody, I've seen all these famous actors and everything else. I need to see where they started. And I don't know if I'm ready for the next the season of that, to be honest. I'll leave it
Looks
at that.
crazy.
But yes, TV is good. We like it. And but so are films. And just a little bit of a plug for us. I briefly mentioned it, but we have launched a new folk horror film festival called Fiends and the Furrows, and it's based in Leith, which most of us are. It's a collaboration between Cinetopia and Leith Kino. So Leith Kino is a lovely film collective that has started up about a year ago that runs regular screenings out of the Leith Depot, which is one of Leith's wonderful institutions. And so we kind of came together. Actually, like one of the co-directors of Leith Kino and myself came together a couple years ago and said, wouldn't it be fun to run a folk horror film festival? Particularly, I think, because there's so much, like we did a lot of work with Cinescapes that's around, tying the location and the film to the land or the places that I was inspired. We did a train spotting screening for its 25th anniversary. Now it's its 30th anniversary, which is crazy. But yeah, so I very much thought the connection between Scotland and the UK and its connection to folklore and this really amazing tradition of folk horror should be explored. And obviously Wicker Man has come up many times. And so Wicker Man was kind of the flagship idea of doing an outdoor screening of Wicker Man. But we'll be talking about a film later on. But Mark Jenkins, really, he's kind of a nouveau folk horror auteur, as they say. And next weekend, is the opening weekend of his next film, Rose of Nevada, which we'll be also reviewing on the show. So yeah, so it just felt like a really timely thing to be talking about, particularly around the fact that we are not so connected to the land as much with all this crazy AI and everything like that. So there's a lot to be explored with with this whole genre. But I wanted to ask you all, if you are horror fans or folk horror fans, and if there are any particular films that you're either looking forward to as part of the program. So I hope everyone checks out our website, which is fiendsinthefurrows.com. But yeah, if you saw the program, were interested in any films, or do you have any suggestions for us to maybe consider, or one of your favorite folk horror films?
Well, I'm a huge horror fiend. And I'm hoping maybe I can maybe get to, but I don't know if I have the time yet. But I'm excited for Gungeon Hess because that's kind of a hard movie to find as a civilian just watching movies in life. I first heard about it in the Black Noir documentary about Black horror.
Mm.
And then I heard about it again in another documentary about folk horror, which is on Shudder. It was on Shudder. I don't know if it is. It's a very long title, and it's like a 3.5 hour documentary about
Is
the
it
history
good?
of. It's really good. It's very, very good. It's about the history of folk horror from like its inception as like those ML White ghost stories up until now and there's like and they talk about African folk horror and Latin American folk horror and it's actually really really interesting and they talk about um the Southern Gothic, which is Gondra and Hess. So I really want to watch that, black horror and different kind of energy to something like The Wicker Man, which is a classic folk horror film, or like Winch Fighter General, or like A Field in England, stuff like that, which is all good, but like I like a little bit of diversity,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to see that if I can make to it, and I hope if I can't, that people who are listening will do it and then tell me if they like it so that I can go and try to find out.
Great. No, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it too because I haven't seen the film. This was it was a programmed by a colleague of mine, but I'm very much looking for it. That was one of my favorites. For ones that I haven't seen yet, and so definitely looking forward to that. And there's some, really interesting Polish films. One that was banned for 10 years, The Devil, and another film by a Polish director. That is based in Canada around the First Nations community. So yes, a very international program that we have, which is what was the point. Kat, any thoughts yourself? I think you said you're not a horror fan, so that's okay. But anything maybe you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, I think conceptually I like horror films. Like I like folklore in general, and I think when I hear about it, I find that really interesting. But my soul can't really take horror. But talking about Mark Jenkin, I do want to see Enys or Enys Men, because I remember when that came out and I read loads about it, but I never got around to seeing it. So that would be great to see on a bigger screen.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw it on a big screen and thought, yeah, I mean, I think that's when sort of the inception of the idea of the Folk Horror Film Festival and sort of again connected to the British tradition. And, I think it is, like you said, Mariana, that it's great that there's so much history of it across internationally. So it's not just a British thing. It's just that it is very connected to British film history as well. So it was nice to see Mark Jenkins' work and how how it kind of revives the classics as well, but also brings his own new way to explore it. So yeah, so that's Fiends in the Furrows. Check out the program. There's some outdoor screenings. There's some indoor screenings. There's screenings for us all. There's some beer, some wine, some Dalston soft drinks on for sale. There's some T-shirts and folk market, so of artists and stuff during Custom Lane as well. So lots going on. Check that out if you can. But now let's get to what's in the cinemas right now that we've been watching and want to talk about. So
Ready and turn. Nice.
The wedding is this Saturday. What stories are you gonna do?
What do you mean, my speech?
Are you gonna use the first time we met?
Yes.
Okay, what about the first date?
Yeah, of course.
Fuck!
You don't have to do a speech.
So you're saying Charlie is your first
Love. Yeah.
first love or your first crush?
Both, I think. Wait, is that insane?
At 30?
So I want to say this thing about her laugh. You know how it's very cute, but it's also kind of
Repulsive even.
All right, so before we got married, we did this thing where we said the worst thing we've ever done.
Okay. I'll tell mine if we all do it. Promise?
What did you do?
This dog.
Beer bottles and porn.
You left an Arab night.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing I've ever done?
Okay,
Are you serious?
all right. So the first film we're reviewing currently out in the cinemas is The Drama. And you know what? Kat, you'll tell us about the film, but I think I had no idea what this film was about before I walked in, and I think it's a very interesting conversation around marketing as well. But Kat, would you tell us a little bit about what this film's about?
Yeah, so the drama is about Emma and Charlie, who are a couple played by Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. And they are the sort of perfect couple in a lot of ways. Charlie loves Emma's wild laughter. They have great sex. Their wedding is in a week. It's all good. And so everything is going smoothly until at a drunken dinner tasting, their friends reveal the worst thing they have ever done. And when it's Emma's turn to share, the shock kind of leaves everyone stunned. And so what would normally be a week of kind of nerves before the wedding turns Emma and Charlie's relationship kind of upside down and tests what they mean by love and whether they can even go ahead with the wedding. Obviously, the whole plot twist rests with what it is that Emma shares with everyone, which should remain a secret. Someone actually asked me the other day whether them knowing about what the plot twist is, or whether what it is that she shared, kind of ruins the film. And I don't think that is the case. But I don't think you should learn too much about it going in before watching it. So yeah, that's the story of the film, and it's just about it's sort of French in that way, in that it's just about talking through the problem, the issues that the couple are now having all of a sudden.
Yeah, I would say actually, because I think there was a lot of conversation around spoilers, is that I didn't know what this film was about, except I knew the spoiler.
Oh no.
It's like the only thing, and I think maybe in the fact that like you're on Instagram looking at things and it's basically like spoiler alert, but like, well, are spoilers necessary or spoiler alerts necessary anymore? But yeah, I'm like, I knew the theme had something to do with said spoiler, which we're more than happy potentially. I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can talk about this film without spoiling the spoiler. So I don't know, but we'll try.
Kind of a key part of the anxieties in the film.
I might have to bring it up. But anyway, Mariana, I'll ask you how you think about the film before we talk about it.
I have weird feelings about the film because I did not like it. But I don't think I felt about it the same way that most people feel about it, at least from my experience seeing people talk about it online. Like, I didn't think it was funny at all. I never laughed for a second. I didn't think it was any close to being a comedy at any point. And then I see people being like, "Oh, but it was so funny." I was like, "Where?" thought it was really. I was really sad for this girl who's trapped in this marriage with now this horrible man who I hate. Um, and I was just like, I thought it was good though. Like I thought I really enjoyed the experience of watching it. Like I thought it was a great looking film, and you know, I thought that it dealt with the plot twist in an interesting way, and I did like it. But I'm like, I think I watched a different film from for other people that I know.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those films that maybe, yeah, that I do think it's been a divisive film, which is I think one reason why we wanted to talk about it. Kat, how about you?
Yeah, I think I had a lot of anticipation, and I think part of it was because the trailer is so good about, and the marketing, as it kind of alluded to, is so vague in terms of, what's going to happen. What is it that is kind of that has come up that they have to deal with all of a sudden that would kind of bring so much kind of anxiety and like turmoil to a relationship before a wedding that isn't to do with like cheating, you know what I mean? Because that would be the sort of classic twist, right? But it's not that. So yeah, I did enjoy it. I thought it was very uncomfortable. I thought it was very cringy, and I think that was kind of the point. Like that created a lot of tension as you were going through the film, and I think that made it kind of funny because when you watch it with other people in the cinema, you could kind of just hearing other people's reactions and them going that kind of
Yeah.
thing, that kind of makes you appreciate yeah the kind of the tension that they're creating throughout the film. So I thought it was interesting. I did laugh. I did think it was funny, but I think it is quite a sad, like it's got the sort of subtext, and obviously the main plot twist that they're dealing with is quite serious. And so I think like the genre that they kind of tried to fit it in terms of like dark comedy, I think is quite rare to see these days, and done in this way where isn't, the film I don't think is mocking anyone or anything necessarily. It's just kind of about, you know these are the issues happening in the US. I'm trying not to like spoil it too much, but like these are some of the serious issues happening in the US. This is how, this is one part of it. The second part of it is, what do you do in a relationship when you think you know someone and then maybe you think you don't? And also, is that important? Like, how do you go about negotiating that with somebody? And how important is it? And also, like, how important is it to you? That your friends have like a good perception of your partner as well. I think that's quite interesting. And we can see that painted quite amazingly, quite funnily in the film. But yeah, I think ultimately it's about kind of how do you find a way to a person, and how you can like sort of accept certain things, and also just how you get through that process. And I think that's always a fun thing to see on screen, because we don't really get a lot of bigger films doing that or dealing with those sort of issues in that way.
Yeah. I would say I probably thought it was funnier than both of you, or liked it better than both of you, but I automatically had a response that was, I mean, the filmmaker I believe is Norwegian,
Yeah.
but I had this very connection to like Ruben Östlund's films, so like The Triangle of Sadness and The Square, like sort of the feeling of uncomfortableness that you get from watching those films, but also sort of observing the ridiculousness of like certain societies, such as like the art world, or like very rich people who like get stuck on a boat, or things like that. So I automatically started to appreciate that in the sense of a romantic dark comedy sort of way. So in that way, I liked it. Also, as an American who's lived in the Northeast, I mean, it's like it definitely there's these vibes of it. I mean, the production design of their apartment and their life, it's very, I enjoyed that a lot, but I also just love that nuance of that life and whatnot. But I definitely so I was fine with the uncomfortableness of what happened, and and that, and I go back to what you said, Mariana, that I didn't expect it to be that, but I love both the characters were really interesting, but like I found like Robert Pattinson to be great acting in this, but like a repulsive character, and like in this sort of simple way of yeah, how how someone can't own up to like anything. This is how I want the world to look at my life and see my life, and yet not really taking ownership of of said relationship or whatnot. So I found that struggles quite uncomfortable, but also really fascinating. And so yeah, and I don't, the other thing I would say is just that it was so nice to be in Film House One. I saw it with a friend, and we were on Screen One, and we were just all sitting afterwards. There were a lot of people who were way younger than me, but we're just sitting afterwards talking about the film, and just in the space. And they didn't kick us all out, which was nice. But two, I think this film does spark debate. So I think that's what's yeah, what's what I really took out of it, because I was sitting there talking to my friend, being like, "What would you do in this situation?" Because and we had maybe two separate perspectives on that.
Yeah, I think
Touchy subject, yeah.
yeah, I think it's definitely that in terms of it's meant to be provoking, and it's meant to, I think, leave you with that sense of what would I do? And I think I was reading some articles about the the way that that plot twist is landing with people, but amongst that there was some kind of criticism, I guess, of yeah, of just like it's meant to leave you with that feeling of oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So somebody was saying that I think it must have been like an IMDb review or something, but they were like, oh, it's really changed my perspective on my own relationship. And I was like, well, like it kind of like made me stop in my tracks a little bit, because I was like, maybe don't take it so seriously. Like it is still just a film, but it does make you like, I think, ask these questions that films don't go all that way with their message, like it'll be like, oh yeah, it is a rom-com or it is a drama or whatever, but actually you'll have like a laugh about it after you've seen the film, and then you kind of move on. But the fact that you kind of really have to reflect and go, "But did that sit with me okay? Like, did I like this character? Did I not?" Like, I found Zendaya quite off-putting for some reason throughout the entire film. Like, I don't know what it was, and I think it has to do with the way that her character was portrayed. And then maybe that was like that, both of them are quite like privileged people as well. Like they're not poor, they're not, they're like getting married and all this stuff. So yeah, lots to kind of like take in. And I think the film also always kind of put you in a position to question your sympathy and kind of go, am I sympathetic to this? Am I unsympathetic? And I love that, and I love when that happens in a film, because that's just the sort of active engagement that you really have to kind of it's almost like hitting the ground running in a way where you can't disengage from that sort of thing in order to engage to enjoy the film. Sorry, and so I think that it did a great job of that.
I feel like what I got from it was similar in that way, and that like it made me I was very thoughtful about it afterwards. I didn't have anyone to talk to, but I just in my own head I was thinking about talking to myself about it. And unlike you, I was very sympathetic to Emma the whole time, because I was that weird kid who's a little bit off-putting. I never planned a plot twist, but uh I I certainly was very awkward and weird, and I feel like I still carry that with me now. And it's very hard to get let go of that like major anxiety that you have as as a teenager. You kind of become a really anxious adult potentially, and that really felt like it hit really closely to me. And I felt really sorry for her, because she's clearly a very isolated person. Like, she doesn't have any friends. She just has her partner's horrible friends who hate her, and that feels that's like her maid of honor is a woman who hates her. Like, that's really sad, and I was really depressed about that for her. And I did see a lot of discourse online about Alana Haim's character being like just the most hypocritical B word of all time. And I'm actually an active disliker of Alana Haim. Historically, I don't really like her as an actress. I thought she did a good job here, better than in the previous films that I've seen her in, but I think going in having already disliking her as an actor, I was like prepared to even dislike her even more because like this person's so mean for no reason. Um, so I felt really sympathetic towards Emma, and then with Charlie, I was like really frustrated the whole time. I was like, you're not even trying to understand the anxiety of this woman. You're so much older than her. You have so much life experience. You're not even trying. So I was like feeling really emotionally like invested in this film, and I think that's why I couldn't find the comedy in it because I was just so sad. I was like so embroiled in my emotions and my feelings, and I was like, I just want to take Emma for coffee and talk to her and talk her out of this marriage, like let's go on a day trip to somewhere else and then we can just go to museums and have a good time. It's fine. um yeah, so like I think maybe that's why I didn't think it was funny. Maybe if I watch it again, I'll be like divorced emotionally from, because I'll know what happens in the end, and I'll be like, okay, now I can, with fresh eyes and a fresh brain, I can forgive the movie and now accept that it is trying to also make me laugh a little bit sometimes, as it is a dramedy type thing. But yeah, I really liked the emotions. I really liked how that it made me feel things. I feel sometimes you watch movies and you don't feel that visceral emotion, which is a thread of also the next film that we're going to talk about. But it's like feels really nice to actually feel things for movies that you're watching, because sometimes you just kind of end up like, yep, that was a film, I watched that, now I'm gonna go home, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was super uncomfortable, like, and I guess that's where the humor lies. I mean, there's the one part that was quite funny to me is this DJ. Okay, so like
He's
when
so
the
good.
second that you see that DJ, he's like that guy, that annoying guy or whatever. And this is the second DJ. But like I mean, they're just spot on in these kinds of characters, which goes back to this idea of like the Oslin, like, like every character sort of fits this. I mean, it's not even an archetype. It's just it fits a character that in some
A human
capacity.
person.
And Alana Haim, interesting. We will catch up maybe on Licorice Pizza because that was like the only PTA film I like. But
It's the one I hate the most.
I think we've discussed the Barbie, yeah, like discord that we have. So anyway, I do think that I'm with you though on the sense of, and I think that's where I come away with um maybe having more sympathy for this film and the subject matter. If the plot twist is this is the worst thing that somebody could potentially ever do, you're also not you're also aware of in this conversation that this is this is this is there are a lot of people who potentially think about these things or do these things. If there is this crisis that's happening in, America, if not, and not just America, but very explicitly America. So are we ignoring this fact, like, and by putting this on the table and having this conversation and why it might happen? And in the case of Emma's situation, you're saying, there's a sense of bullying or, not fitting in, or all these sort of things that led her character to who she is and where she is now, but also where she was at a certain time in her life. And the Alana and the Robert Pattinson and all the other characters being these very hypocritical, very judgmental people who are attempting through the whole process of the fact that the wedding continues, is that they won't actually deal with reality the same way that, Emma is attempting to, or being honest about. So I think it's really interesting, and it's not, some people have said the story isn't dull, and I think it's a complex film to have a long conversation about, but also uncomfortable in that sort of like enjoyable Nordic way, so I really really enjoyed it.
I think also what was interesting about the what you were just saying about Emma and the way that she didn't really have a chance to, I guess, explain herself. There were certain flashbacks that you kind of maybe not entirely sure if they are 100% true. You don't know if they are kind of Emma's memories or they're kind of the fantasy of Charlie's imagination. Um, but and I think that's probably what's aiding the kind of the comedy of the film, in that it isn't really about them solving it in that way. Then don't ever like sit down and go, okay, you tell me what you did or didn't do and why that was the case. And you're right, like, yeah, Charlie just doesn't really ever attempt to understand it. But I guess if they went there in the film, then that would kind of diminish the comedy of it, which is I think the comedy is just from the tension and the fact that it's just a bit like cringe and awkward and like, oh my God, you know what is going on. But then it allows for that conversation to kind of happen afterwards, which is quite nice. But I think it's interesting that, yeah, you point out that, yeah, Emma is the kind of the person who you have most sympathy for, because that's not how I felt after watching it. But now talking about it, I'm like, you're right, you're completely right. And yeah, it's Charlie who's just, yeah, like I think I love that scene where he's talking to his friends, and they're like, if you need to leave the country like that, like that's fine, just go, just like leave everything behind. And I was like, whoa, what is that? Like, like, and I think every time Charlie kind of mentioned, he kind of pitched this hypothetical um idea of like, what would you do if your partner told you this and that, you know? And everyone's reaction was just so harsh and just so like kind of like irrational. And I was like, oh, that's really bizarre that this is how people are reacting. So yeah, but again, I think that's part of the comedy, that like people having a visceral reaction rather than kind of no one tries to understand Emma like at all. But yeah, that's the sad part.
Well, I read that originally they didn't have a specific race for Emma in the script. She was supposed to be white, like everybody else is in the film, except for his friend. But then they cast Zendaya in it, and I think the added layer of her being biracial really makes it even more poignant, because now you're adding the race situation in America, which is very complex and very difficult, especially for people who are black, and having that layer, and then having like the only person who has even a little bit of sympathy for her, kinda, being his best friend who is black, and then his white wife, Alana, who I forgot her real name, Rachel, who has absolutely no sympathy for her at all, and who is like an actual bad person who actually did do something bad to her child when she was a child, and has like absolutely no remorse for that. Like, I think that's a very interesting layer to the film, because it makes you think, at least it makes me even more sympathetic towards this person, because again, she's isolated, and also she's the only, like, she doesn't have any black women around her who are protecting her from all these white ladies. Um, and that's an interesting perspective. And I wonder if they actually thought about that after casting her, or if it was just like a fortuitous uh, chance from having cast Zendaya, who I'm sure was added as like, she brought a level of star power to the film that obviously like someone else might not have, because she's kind of like the biggest star in the world. And she's the reason I watched the film to start with, because she's so charming and I love her. So, you know, I was like, yeah, I'll watch this film. I'm not a fan of Robert Pattinson that much, but I'll watch a film with Zendaya in it.
I am a fan of both of them, and I find them both charming, and I think that's why I watched it. But I guess I think even like, I won't go back into how much I hate Wuthering Heights, but I think it's such a good star power, like it's like what we didn't expect with those stars, you know. It's like, you know, yeah, Zendaya and Robert Pattinson can probably do almost anything. I mean, I think they can, but this wasn't what I expected from this film, and yet they both handled it so well. But exactly what you were saying, Mariana. I mean, I do think those kinds of conversations on why and how we are where we are right now in American society, and where this has left us all, because a lot of this conversation also, I feel like, as someone who's older now, it's so ever present in American life. So I'm not to say that it didn't exist. It did. It's just that it's so much more a part of everyone's fear in life. And so in the case of Alana Haim's character, Rachel's character, you know, that character had a connection to it. So I don't know, as someone who hasn't had a connection to horrifying things that have happened and the trauma around that, how I would respond even as an audience member on that. But I do think that it's clearly something to be aware of, is that as you walk down the street, which I think the point is, you might meet somebody, you might know somebody, and that thought might have crossed their mind. So, and why that thought might have crossed their mind isn't necessarily just them. It's entirely our society's responsibility to figure out why. And I think they bring that up in a very, yeah, in a dark comedy way, which sometimes is one of the best ways to talk about things. Not always, but sometimes it's a good way to talk about very serious things.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think with yeah, with how delicate the subject matter can be, and um how difficult it is to talk about certain things. I do think that finding your way through it with comedy sometimes is even easier, because you have that kind of like, it's not the tension of like drama, or like, you can make a little joke about it, and then you can kind of let some of that stress and the tension out with laughter. Although you can't go all the way around where people misreact to things, where it's like they react to discomfort with laughter, which isn't necessarily what you want if that's not the intention. Like when I saw Blue Velvet and everyone was laughing the whole time in the screening, and that was really irritating, because I was like, that's not the intention of this film at all. But for this, clearly there was an intention there. I didn't feel it when I was watching it, but I could tell that there was an intention of release. And some moments I did laugh, actually, with the DJ and the two DJs, actually, both times.
Yeah, both DJs are funny.
They were very funny. And with, her dad's speech and talking about the stuff, and it's like, and that was quite amusing. And the wedding part was actually where I was able to start laughing, because it's so ridiculous. It just kind of started to snowball. It was like an avalanche of madness, and it just kept going, getting worse and worse and worse, and the fight and everything. And that was kind of like, it felt like, okay, I can laugh now because it's crazy and it's ridiculous, and I feel the tension has been released. And it makes the difficulty of the subject matter a little bit easier to talk about or think about, because you kind of be given permission by the film to laugh at it a little bit. And I do like that they did that, because if it was just a straight drama with like a dry drama, it would have been like so depressing probably, and it wouldn't have ended the way that it ended, which is kind of a hopeful ending, I think. I guess.
Yeah, I
But-
was also going to ask you guys what you thought about the ending, because I probably, that to me the ending isn't the strongest part for me.
It's cute, I think. Like, it's cute callback to the scene earlier. So like from like a writing perspective, I think it's cute. From like a character perspective, I think Emma can do better.
Emma can do better, yes.
Harley can run hell. He can
Yeah,
choke on his Diet Coke.
Yeah, I didn't need that ending. It was a bit too on the nose, maybe, and a bit too cutesy for the type
Yeah.
of film that was. But equally, yeah, as you say, Mariana, the kind of callback to Zendaya's or Emma's kind of personality in that way was nice, as and the fact that in the context of what we kind of talked about in here on the podcast, in that like she really is the stronger personality there. She is the one who is able to kind of give the relationship a chance and kind of progress it in some sort of way that feels good. Yeah.
Well, as we've talked about it quite a lot, and I think that's the best part about this film, is that it sparks discussion, and in the cinema and out of the cinema. So if any of it sounds interesting or something you want to, we highly think you should at least check it out. It's the drama, and it's currently in cinemas across the UK and the US and probably many other places in the world. So check it out.
Please state your name.
Ryland Grace. I just woke up from a coma. I'm several light years from my apartment. And I'm not an astronaut. I'm not an astronaut. I'm not an astronaut.
If you don't go, you die. With the rest of us.
The sun is dying.
You are the only scientist who might know what this says.
I'm just a teacher at Grover Cleveland Middle.
You have a doctorate in molecular biology. I need you to come with us. This is Project Hail Mary. The sun is not the only star dying. Every star was infected by its neighbor, except one.
Why?
We don't know.
Which is why we built a ship to go there and find out.
It's 11.9 light years away. The astronauts die in space.
It's what you Americans would call a long shot.
Hail Mary. I get it. Who on earth is going to sign up for this?
If we do nothing, everything on this planet will go extinct.
You'll find a solution.
You are my solution.
I put the knot in astronaut. I've never done anything. I've never done a space. I can't even moonwalk.
Okay, so the next film we're going to review is Project Hail Mary, also very much in the cinema. I went to a completely sold out like afternoon screening on Saturday at the View and Omni, which was great to see. It's great to see the cinema like wildly busy. But Mariana is going to talk about this film.
Yes, and to say I went to a 10:30 p.m. screening at the View and it was busy, so it was like a
Kept going.
mad.
Yes.
So Project Hail Mary is an adaptation of an Andy Weir novel. He wrote The Martian, so you can kind of guess the type of main character energy you're going to get from the lead man. It's a science fiction story about a scientist who is sent to space to help fix Earth. Basically, the Earth and also many other planets are dying because there's a spore-like thing that's eating the sun or destroying the sun, and they're trying to figure out what it is. So Sandra Hüller, an icon, a legend, she gathers all the world's leaders and scientists, and Ryan Gosling as Dr. Grace is one of them, who comes in and helps them solve this problem. In the meantime, he meets a little rock guy in space called Rocky, and they join forces to fix the problem and save the world. It's great. Great movie. 10 out of 10. 12 out of 10 from me. Yeah. So, I guess I'll start since I love it so much. I cried the whole time. I didn't never stop crying the whole movie. It was beautiful, like such a beautifully shot and colored film. It would the special effects were so gorgeous and so unique and so powerful, and the Rocky was so cute and poignant and moving, and I thought, the emotional beats were so successfully done that my heartstrings were very pulled the whole time. They were just taut. And yeah, just really solid space movie with really beautiful emotional moments and excellent characters that are actually moving, and they do stuff, and they actually connect with you, and there's no romance, which I love. I'm so sick of romance in random movies that don't need it. It's just, yeah, I just really liked it. I don't know, I like this movie so much.
Kat, what did you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. There was really nothing wrong with it in any sort of way, and I think we did a double bill, so we watched the drama first and then went straight into the next screen and
Wow.
watched
Bold.
I
this one.
think that's bold, but it's also good. That was a good way to do it.
Exactly, it was a nice way to kind of stagger the evening, but yeah, really, really great. I think Ryan Gosling is just, I think he was proves himself as just one of the, most flexible kind of actors, and I think he's got such a good comedic flair to him. And the fact that you're basically, what is it, like 90% of the time it's just him essentially on the screen is just really incredible. So yeah, I think I would agree with Mariana in terms of, the visuals are fantastic. I think the way that the story progresses very good, and you kind of never get too bored. I think that's thanks to the kind of circular narrative that they went for. So it kind of starts in the middle, and then you kind of finish with having all the knowledge, and you kind of understand why Ryland was sent to space in the first place. And I think that's actually, it gives it such a gravity to I think who Ryland is. And so I think it's almost like a character study, you know, because he's in space by himself up until the point that he kind of meets Rocky. But even then, it kind of feels like it's just him kind of dealing with being by himself and kind of resisting being a hero, but then also kind of becoming the hero. And yeah, so as far as kind of Hollywood films go, he is the kind of unconventional hero in that way, and I think that really makes it. And there's no kind of unnecessary national government kind of, you know, trying to save the world, and there's no American flags flying around, and you know, that's the thing.
President Morgan Freeman
Exactly.
coming in.
Exactly. So I think that really makes it, and I think then it becomes really just about the relationship that Ryland strikes with this alien, but also, yeah, just a kind of personal journey, I guess. And yeah, it is just very stunning as well. I think it is a little long. I did feel towards the end that maybe even 15 minutes could be cut from the film, but it didn't take away from it. I think it's just as a sort of, you know, you go in, you pay for a ticket, you go to the cinema, especially if you go to like one of the modern ones like View, or, you know, the commercial theaters. It's so all encompassing, and I think that's one of the best films to kind of see in a theater like that, because you just kind of relax into it and go, yes, just take me with you, you know, on this journey. And that's exactly what it was. So yeah, I would also say 12 out of 10. For me.
Yay. 12 out of 10 for me. Actually, maybe 11 out of 10. Only because I'm not a space movie kind of person. I mean, I loved Star Wars early on, and I think I just was over inundated by Star Wars fanatics or whatnot, and in my life. But I think this film is one of the better Hollywood films I've seen. It certainly deserves all the hype that, you know, it's gotten so far. I did go to the person I was watching it with and say, yeah, like being like Ryan Gosling is maybe one of the only people I can just watch like entirely just on his own, you know, like he's just extremely captivating, and not in the sense of just being an extremely attractive human being. It's just a completely captivating actor. And there's very few people. I haven't seen The Martian. I haven't seen all that. I was asking my friend to tell me all the other intergalactic films that involve like 1 to 2, even like I haven't even seen the Brad Pitt one, which is just him, but like I like, because they don't interest me completely, like one human being and me in space. I do think it's really special at this moment of being from Florida, and you know, with the Cape Canaveral stuff and everything, that it's happening with the Artemis too, you know, and it happened at the same time. I don't know if that was planned. I don't know how that all happened, because I do actually think the Artemis was planned for February, because it was in Florida in February when it was could have gone up. But it's really it's just, I think watching that is extremely emotional, and it does feel, um while maybe, you know, it launched from Florida or the US, it does feel sort of an international like achievement, and something that's so bigger than just, you know, than just one nation. And I think that's what feels great about this film, is how much it does sort of touch on these human levels, these beyond human levels, these connections that you have with a rock. And I'm with you, like maybe Wally was the last time I've had so much, you know, like connection to like a robot or a rock or something else, because I cried through many parts of this, you know, especially, yeah, the one some seminal tense moments that I didn't expect to be as tense as they were for me. But yeah, a really beautiful film, and how simple a film can. It's not a simple film, but it is. It has to take you on this belief that you're, light years away and with something, where it really has to take you on this journey, and it did. And that's a combination of so many different things, but I can't say there was something wrong about any of that. The score as well. I mean, just the
So
score
good.
was so good.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah,
it's also not too kind of fantastical in any sort of way. I think sometimes space movies can be a bit like, I mean, obviously it's not Guardians of the Galaxy either. Like it's not that sort of movie, but and I think it has a similar vibe in that like you can really kind of relax into it. And Guardians of the Galaxy was the first film where I was like, oh, this is just fun. This is like a great entertainment. And it kind of went into Project Hail Mary with the same feelings. And I think that was kind of confirmed. Um, but yeah, even just kind of that's why I was saying like if I'm not gonna spoil it, but like the end of the film is a little bit like just a bit too much. Where I'm like, now you're going a bit like just a
Yeah.
step too far in terms of my belief system and what you were kind of trying to achieve the entire film. But it is absolutely stunning visually. Like even the space itself, the ship that they're on, and Rocky the alien is just I think the kind of what's the word, the texture that the alien's got, but also the personality and the way that he like keeps tapping onto
Ugh.
the kind of glass bowl that he's in all the time. It's
My
just
bump. Fist my bump.
but it's things
Maze,
like that
maze, maze.
that like make it that much special because it's so different. And even having these kind of uh what's the word, not tacit, what's the word,
Tactile.
tactile, thank you so much, like these kind of tactile little details that make it that much more special. And yeah, so I think it was just truly beautiful. It was just a joy to look at every single frame and go, yeah, there's nothing unconvincing about this in any sort of way. So yeah, it really worked.
I felt a lot like when I watched Moon for the first time. I think Ryan Gosling has a very similar energy to Sam Rockwell in that he's endlessly rewatchable. I feel like I could watch just them just alone in a room, just talking for hours, which is this movie is what it is. Um and it's like obviously Moon is a lot more complex like mentally for the characters, a very different type of film, but it's kind of similar as well in a way. um, Very good film. Recommend Moon if you've not seen Moon.
Not seen Moon.
It's really good. It's also
really
much shorter than Project Hail Mary. So, but yeah, I just think there's something about like the simplicity of like a movie about sacrifice, like personal sacrifice for the sake of um the many, like the Star Trek thing, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few and the one. And this is like what are you willing to do for everybody, for the whole world? And I think for time we're living in right now where we're going through unprecedented disaster striking at every single day, as an individual we're being asked to make sacrifices to help everybody. And this is kind of like putting that into a little bit of perspective, like you have the ability to do something, you should do something. And this man is a scientist and he knows everything about microbes or whatever. So this is his duties to be shot to space and figure it out. So I think by the end, I know that's a little bit goofy, but I was sold on it. I was like, you know what? You've earned this. You've earned this ending, and I'm buying it. I'll buy a ticket for the ending. Thank you very much. I was having a great time. Um, yeah, I think it's a very powerful message actually. Now and I don't even know if they intended the message to, which maybe, Drew Goddard is a very intelligent writer, so maybe he did kind of. I don't know what the book is like. I've not read any Andy Weir before, but I know that he's a little bit of a cuckoo, so maybe I don't know if that's in the book. But Drew Goddard and um Lord and Miller, the directors, they're like smart, intelligent people. I imagine that they kind of figured this is a good story to tell right now. And yeah, I just thought it was ended up being actually quite powerful outside of just being really beautiful film. That made me cry more than I've ever cried in a cinema before in my life. Cried so much. There was a scene where it's not a spoiler because it's not a plot point that I cried at, where he's just like floating in space and he's like they changed the light to show like the sparkling spores. It was so beautiful. I just started crying. It was nuts.
It was beautiful. I did cry. I cry in every movie, almost every movie. So I can't even like. It wasn't like this was more intense. I even cried in the drama, and I won't even tell you where. That was stupid. But like, it just like it happens. It happens. So, but I do hear what you're saying about like, yeah, having a good positive movie right now. Like that's what we need. You know, we need a nice role model. We need a good time. We need a rock who we can fall in love with. I mean, I do agree the end, and I literally I clocked it, but I was already like walking into this being like waiting for this to be something I wasn't gonna enjoy because it's some sort of like Disney space movie. But I the whole film blew me away in the way that it surprised me that I enjoyed it that much. I didn't find any of it cheesy, except the end. And my film companion said, like, it was a slightly like a Disneyfication at the end. It was a little too much at the end. And I see that, but it didn't get me annoyed like, any other film we've talked about that annoyed the living heck out of me. So like that, okay, I'll give you that, but I knew what I was walking into. So it wasn't like I was walking into something that was, you know, can type of film that I expect a certain level of whatever. So I got that, and that's fine. But yeah, I was like it was 11, like 12 out of 10, 11 out of 10 for a Hollywood movie. There's very few flaws I can see for that for this film. Emotionally, storyline, imagery, also mad props to the costumes of Ryan Gosling that like harken back to like classic
good.
80s like NASA. Like one of my favorite films growing up was Space Camp, and there was just a lot of Space Camp going on in my head, like like so I enjoyed that as well. Yeah, it's like some great like yeah, some great branding of NASA like during its core great era. But anyway, all good.
Well,
All good on my side.
I want to give a shout out to the costume department for Sandra Hüller's coats. If we must, because it's incredible. The coatage is outstanding.
I
Excellent.
need to go back to watch the coats as well, but like the
beautiful
costume, yeah,
pants
was so
great.
good.
Good stuff. She looked beautiful. I mean, she does always.
And it wasn't like overly done in the sense that like when you look at the latest Jim Jarmusch, I feel like that's just I just felt like it's too costumey, and but this was just fun. It just felt like it was nostalgic for sort of as we envision, like a nostalgia for the space program, if you will, and I think that's what we all needed right now. And I think again with this connection with what happened with the recent moon trip, it feels very poignant. It's much better than the Daisy's Katy Perry stuff, like
It's actually, yeah, that's incredible that that's happened.
Gail King in space.
Wow. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think you're right, Amanda. I was watching the what the takeoff of Artemis 2 when it was happening in real time, and it was quite incredible actually. It's really interesting to draw those parallels, and I think you're right in that it kind of reinforced the film itself, Project Hail Mary, in that you kind of you get that positivity from it, and also even a sense of like, yeah, you can see how that could be not our future necessarily. Like you're not taking this as a realistic depiction of anything, but there were certain elements that kind of felt like, well, we just did it, like we just went around the moon, and so what, why could we not kind of send people in a coma off to, God knows where, with the kind of, the developments of AI and the kind of technology that we have now. You kind of see it happening. I think maybe even 5-10 years ago that film would have been very much like in the future. Now I don't know, maybe it just kind of the coinciding with the moon fly by makes it a bit more real. And then maybe that's why then the ending again kind of makes it feel a bit like, maybe
Yeah.
maybe it's not quite that, but yeah.
As long as the tech bros aren't in charge of it all, then,
Well, too late for that.
No, I know. I just every time I think of Mars, I now have like Elon's voice, and then it just scares me. So yeah, this was an anti. For me, it was like the anti-Elon,
Yes,
space
For
movie.
sure.
Yeah.
It's a space movie for people who believe in science,
Yes.
which is not what the tech bros believe in. So it's kind of, it makes it more hopeful because it's like about scientific discovery and curiosity and learning things, and also using that knowledge to improve people's lives instead of just, milking as much money out of the planet as you possibly can before you go into your bunker. So yeah, it's good. I like it.
Yes, let's go back to Project Hail Mary when we need to, like on a weekly basis, daily basis these days. But yes. All right, Project Hail Mary.
Yay.
Yay. Go see it.
Please do give him more money for the box office.
Yay. And also, I mean, yeah, good contender, I feel like, for a strong, Hollywood film that could do well in award season as well. I hope it does,
I'm already campaigning for every technical category. I'm on the streets. I'm campaigning actively as we speak. I'm campaigning for that, and I'm campaigning for Tom Cruise and Digger. Those are my two campaigns that I'm already. That's not out yet, but I'm already campaigning because I want him to win. So there you go.
Okay, well, we'll again have to talk about that because Tom Cruise and I, we're not.
We'll come back to it when the time comes.
Let's not
But
go
those are
there
my active
today.
campaigns. I'm
Please
doing
don't
it.
tell me you like James Cameron as well, please.
No, he sucks.
Okay, good. Because we already disagree on PTA, but like it's fine. We'll be fine.
Oh, PTA sucks, but I love Phantom Thread.
Oh, I like Phantom Thread too. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right, we're fine with this. Moving on.
Project Hail Mary, great movie. Go watch it.
Lost. Or are we gonna try again?
Who's gonna crew?
I'll be back in a couple of days.
"3 years Luke was on that boat. Different place back again.
See you soon, my darling.
Only one thing worse than being at sea.
Oh, yeah?
Not being at sea. Don't worry. She always comes back.
Welcome home, boy. Good trip. Emily?
Can't you see what's going on?
She thinks you're someone else.
I am someone else. For now.
We just go out there again, and when we come back, it'll all be back to normal. What's your real name?
'Tis lost in the wind.
Just want to get home.
So the final film we're going to review is Rose of Nevada, a film by Mark Jenkin, which is going to be out at the end of this week from when this airs. But also as part for what I know, the only outdoor screening of it is happening on the 26th of April as part of the Fiends and the Furrows film festival. And I caught the film originally at the London Film Festival, and Kat has caught it as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. Kat, would you mind telling us about this film?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, directed by Mark Jenkin. We find Nick, played by George MacKay, and Liam, played by Callum Turner, in a Cornish village, leading quite different lives, but both could do with more money. And so Nick decides to join a fishing boat to just earn some extra cash, because his and his partner's roof just fell in. And so, yeah, he decides to do a bit of extra work on this boat called Rose of Nevada. Whereas Liam also joins the crew with the captain or the skipper. They set out, but the trouble is they don't really return to the present. They actually go back 30 years, and they kind of come back into the same village, but it's 30 years earlier. And so they kind of, Nick and Liam, they become intertwined with the community from 30 years ago, obviously kind of living their lives a little bit there and then going off to the sea again. But what's interesting about that is that Nick and Liam have quite different approaches to this new life. So Nick obviously has lost his partner and a daughter actually through this process, so he can't really find them again, and so he's feeling trapped. He's feeling quite resistant to this new reality. Whereas for Liam, he kind of we find him lounging around just in like next in the harbor somewhere at the beginning of the film. And so when he goes back 30 years, he actually finds that he's got a partner and a daughter, and he's really involved with the community, and he's kind of really acceptant of his new life. And so yeah, it's really interesting, and the whole film is just about them kind of fishing and then going back to this village and trying to figure it all out. Filmed on 16mm film. The whole film's got a really interesting sort of texture, and the sound, I think, is also almost like a character in the film itself. But yeah, in terms of story, kind of mysterious, but just works. I think it really works with the texture and everything. But yeah, I'll stop there and we can continue chatting. But what did you think, Amanda, when you saw it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I obviously picked it for a screening, like outdoors, and I am a big fan of Mark Jenkins' work, and I think in part I am a huge fan of 16mm film and films, and it's not just about like, I mean, he is a craftsman, and in a way that's like it's very like it's in part cinematic, but it's in part art, like he does, like, I think, hand develop this film. And at the very beginning with Bait, it was I mean, it was a decision he made, but it was also like it was not a film that was highly funded, and people really responded to this film. He's become kind of this like British BFI sort of master. So, but rightfully so. I think the nice thing about this film is of the three, it kind of harkens back to the original bit of Bait, which is very much about the Cornish. It's a Cornish film. It's very tied to the story of this area, which I like, but I think it is approachable in a way that maybe the other two, and I wouldn't say the other two weren't, because we're screening as men, and but I think it is an approachable film, and yet mysterious, and has all the glamour of 16mm and like the artisticness that you would expect from a Mark Jenkin film. But he does everything. Like, I think he even, if I'm wrong, did he write the score? He just does, like, it's like almost everything is his, and it's not too much everything his. It's really beautiful. It's beautiful work.
Yeah, and he did do the music, which I didn't realize. And again, I think it just adds such a layer of eeriness and kind of unsettling feeling, throughout the film. And I haven't seen In His Men, but I'm again assuming that's the kind of vibe that he's going for. And it's actually so intriguing. I think it's such a joy to you kind of, because going into that film that, as you said, Amanda, it's kind of part of the Cornish community. He's got a lot of control over a lot of the film. I believe he's got some students who kind of come in and help him shoot some of it. And they kind of, when I saw some interviews with him, he was talking about how even the filming itself is so embedded within the community, and they try not to be disruptive and all of this stuff. And so when you see it all kind of done, you really appreciate all of that work that goes into it, and how it feels like a small film, but but actually it is really kind of artful and kind of slow, but it's definitely got his stamp on it. So yeah, really enjoyable. And I think for the 60mm as well, it gives it such a, like, again, like texture, and you see a lot of kind of shots of the harbor where the boat is, and there's so many kind of shots of like rusty metals and the kind of fishing nets and all this kind of fishing gear, I guess. And the 60mm just makes it so much more vibrant. Like the color palette of the entire film is just, it's just incredible. And as somebody who loves textures and different kind of colors and vibrant colors, it's just yeah, it's almost like again, like a tactile experience. And also obviously because they had to do the sound in post-production, I think sometimes you can kind of, you can pick up on it because sometimes it can be a bit messy, you know. And but it really wasn't. It kind of, again, it felt very much like I wouldn't, unless I knew that that was the case, I wouldn't really think that they kind of layered the sound on top. And actually it kind of, again, adds to that feeling of eeriness because it's so almost messy, you know, like there's just a lot of sound happening, and maybe you don't hear everything all the time. And that can be frustrating sometimes, but I don't actually, it is in this case. Again, it just kind of adds to the realness of it. And like, yeah, being on the boat, you know, hearing the kind of fish being gutted and that kind of thing. Yeah, that was a lot of, I took a lot of enjoyment in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a long time ago, I made a short film for like a course about fishermen in Maine, and so like I don't know, it was maybe that is why my tie to the fisherman story is that it comes back, but because I smell it, you know, you smell it like.
Yeah.
But also just yeah, it is super atmospheric. It is really really interesting stuff, and I think I won't be, I mean, obviously I want the best weather forecast for our outdoor screenings, but it does, if it rains a bit, it will be like you paid for it and the cinema, and it's like one of those like Disney experiences where the mist hits you and it feels like the best kind of film to be outdoors, right?
For
Because
sure.
like you will actually
Yeah.
experience what it is. But yeah, there's a lot going on. It's confusing. We'll leave it at there. Like the mystery is what makes it horror-y. It's not scary. It's 12A. It's not. I don't find it scary other than tense. In the same way that Enys is, again, it's this idea of folklore and the connection to the land, the connection to like local community. And so I know that Mark Jenkin doesn't really like, at least I've been told in some Q&As he's done, that he doesn't really like the idea that it's like part of just the folk horror genre. On that being said, there's a clear nostalgia to the kind of tradition that we're talking about, but yet and obviously with the use of 16mm, it feels nostalgic. But I do think it is a properly modern film, and good performances from these two really big actors,
Yeah.
which I think is a new step for Mark Jenkin, using some quite big names
Yeah.
in his film.
Yeah, and actually, I've been following George MacKay for a long, long time since he was in Captain Fantastic, which feels like a very long time ago. Well, like 10 years ago now or something. So yeah, so it's great to see him sort of back because I feel like I haven't seen him in anything in a while. So that was a big plus, and I think he's just, yeah, he's great. Fun fact about the captain or the skipper on the boat. He's an actor, but he was a fisherman for most of his life, I believe, which you can tell as well. Like he's got such a way of kind of not only like speaking, but also around the boat that you kind of feel like that can't be just kind of learned, you know. So that's really good. But also I think for somebody who, I don't really have any connection to Cornwall, but I thought that it was interesting kind of being given an opportunity to consider these themes of like unemployment or kind of fishing, which obviously would have been a big part of Cornwall. And like even in Scotland, I like what you were saying about the fact that when you're going to screen, bait, or when that sort of thing. When it's placed in a harbor, which in Leith it would have been, you just kind of just being in that landscape kind of makes you a bit more connected to the film, and you kind of go, okay, I guess that's what it would have looked like. And for me, that's a really big part of films, kind of feeling like maybe I'm there, maybe I can imagine what that was really like for those people. But it also interestingly like showing the difference between 30 years ago, when I kind of go back in time, the whole harbor is like full of people and
Yeah,
everyone's
it's busier.
part of it, and they're like repairing the nets all together, and the kind of the way that we think about fishing now has changed so much. But I think and I work in sustainability, so I feel like I really care about this sort of stuff, and when there's a crossover between film and sustainability and the way that we talk about like fishing and how it's unsustainable and all of this stuff, I think what films do really well is that they provide that nuance of like, yes, of course, industrial fishing is like the worst, right, for a lot of different reasons. But what it does show you is that it did feed the community in the way that like people had jobs, people kind of more dependent on each other, and that really created the sort of culture that you lived in as well. And I think it's such an important part of filming, especially like kind of this sort of regional local filmmaking, that I really, really appreciate. And I think it just kind of, yeah, makes you appreciate that kind of not only because I think what I'm trying to get at is that not everything is black and white. You can't just kind of say, well, fishing is bad because it's like, it's like all the waters are like overfished. And it's like, yes, but equally, if people dependent on it for different reasons, you have to appreciate that there is a benefit to that sort of
Yeah.
thing, and doing things maybe on a smaller scale, but doing it within a community of people that you kind of, yeah. So I thought that was really interesting.
But what I love about it is these layers, and it's exactly what you're saying. So like when we first chose to show Bait, it was for a season called Cinema on the Shore, which would then the idea of the connection between like the Leith Harbor and like, and a Cornish town that's going through gentrification felt like a connection that local people would understand. And the Enys men, um, the story is a woman's sort of a biologist, and she's left on this island, and starts to basically have these crazy things happen, very folklore. But the things, then the people who show up are tied to the land, or what she sees, the ghost that she sees is very much connected. And I think in this way, that, as you were saying, sort of the vibrancy of going back to kind of that Bait idea, where like Bait was about like the tourists or the holiday home sort of taking over. In this case, it's what was it like, 30 years ago in the same town, and that same connection. There again, it's that layeredness of a conversation that's so important about when you go to a place like Leith, or you go to a place like this town, these towns, you see that history, and you see the connection of industry meets, land, and meets like folklore, and meets, so, and the way that he does it is so it's not just nuanced, it's spot on, it's there, it's physically there. So I think it's just it is really interesting stuff. And I think, but once you sit and think about it, you appreciate it more. It's because of what you said, the colors and the like, all the sensory experiences with it. So I hope Mark Jenkin comes to an outdoor screening that we do someday, but I don't think he's coming to this one on the 26th. But I hope you do. I hope you do, and I hope other people do, because I think it is quite a great film. And even if you don't make it to that screening, watch it if you can. And when we come back, I'll be speaking with Mark Jenkin, who joined us while on a Q&A tour across the country. He'll be in Edinburgh this Tuesday at the Cameo, and you can also catch both Enys, Maine and Rose of Nevada outdoors as part of our Fiends in the Furrows festival this Sunday, the 26th of May. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today on Cinetopia Radio. We're thrilled to be that you're coming to Edinburgh for the screening for the cameo of your next film, Rose of Nevada. But also we're screening 2 of your films, Enys Main and Rose of Nevada outdoors this weekend in Leith. So yeah, we're very excited to be talking to you about these films today.
Great, very excited to be here.
When we started running outdoor film screenings with our touring outdoor festival, Cinescapes, I was really interested in tying cinema to the land and place, which is why we originally screened Bait here in Leith when we did a weekend called Cinema on the Shore. I feel like your films feel incredibly atmospheric, but also tactile in their sense of location and their understanding of a layered location, how it can be. Obviously, your films are rooted in Cornwall, but I feel like they resonate very much with a harbor community like Leith. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about why place is such an important part of your work in general.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully the films sort of resonate universally. That's the aim. You know, and things like surface things like harbors and that kind of thing. But also, I think you know I think sometimes in the Celtic nations, the films are read in a slightly different way as well. So, you know, for me, the setting is not. I mean, it is important and it is kind of everything in a way, but it's also something that I don't tend to think about too much. It's more about creating films that feel authentic, and the more authentic the film can feel, I think the more likely the audience are to go with the themes and to recognize themselves within it, even if the specific location is very alien to them. I think, you know, just creating an authentic context is so important when making films, because I think audiences are very sophisticated and they sniff out things that are phony. And so it's kind of almost by default that my films are set in that landscape and in those locations, because it's just, that's where I'm from, and it's really the only place on the planet that I can get anywhere near to authenticity through representation, because I that's the place I know the best.
Watching Bait, Enys Main, and Rose of Nevada together, I just watched Enys Main again and Rose of Nevada right alongside each other. It feels like Rose of Nevada comes a bit back to something in Bait, but also has this sense of time slipping with Enys Main. Do you feel that the films are in dialogue with each other, or is it just something that's just happening instinctively?
Yeah, I think the more I take the film, the more I take Rose of Nevada out to audiences, the more people talk about Bait and Enys Main and as a kind of trilogy, which is what, you know, is how the films are now being marketed, which I think is not something that occurred to me, but now I'm fully behind. I really like the idea that they are a trilogy and they all sort of talk to each other, and it means it sort of feels a little bit like the end of something, and the end of something kind of sounds like a negative, but I always think the end of something, it precedes the beginning of something else, which is very exciting. But for these 3 films, I think a lot of people pointed out that maybe Rose of Nevada was a combination of Bait and Enys Main, with the sort of social realism elements of Bait, with the more supernatural elements of Enys Main. But then I do think I think Bait had moments of the supernatural in there. There's ghosts in Bait, even though the context is very much social realism. And then Rose of Nevada obviously has got a real social realist comment, and then also Enys Main, which was in some ways marketed as a horror or an uncanny film that existed in a supernatural realm, did also have a sort of social realist element to it as well. So I think all the films there's a commonality that runs through them. And when I originally wrote Bait, I started writing Bait in 1991. I finished the first draft in 2001. We shot it in 2017, and we shot draft 42. So the issues that were within Bait had preoccupied me since I was really in my early 20s. And I think with Enys Main, I was like quite keen to kind of get away from that for a little while, but those preoccupations soon returned. And Rose of Nevada was written before we shot Enys Main. And I think just the way the world was changing at that moment, I started thinking I was back in that world of the themes of Bait again, and community, and what that means in contemporary time. So yeah, I do think they all talk to each other. I think I haven't seen Bait for a long time. I haven't watched Rose of Nevada since it premiered in Venice in August. So I think, and I'm deliberately not watching my films, but always thinking I will sit down and watch them again at some point, because it's quite handy when you're doing Q&As to sort of know what you're talking about, because the audiences end up knowing the films better than you do. But I think now, because this idea that they're a trilogy, I think the time is coming where I might just sit down and watch them back to back. And maybe I'd be able to answer your question better once I've done that.
I mean, I heard Rose Nevada came out of a conversation with your partner, Mary, during lockdown while working on Enys Main. Tell me a little bit about the initial idea and how it grew into a film.
Yeah, well, I came up with it out of necessity, really, because Enys Main had been shut down because of the pandemic. We couldn't shoot, and also we were in lockdown, so I thought this would be a real fertile time to sit and write. And the reality of it was that, lockdown and the sort of the world trauma that was going on, and the existential individual crises that people were having wasn't the most fertile ground for creativity. But I forced myself to write that film because I needed to be doing something, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to get a bit ahead of the game when production did start up and cinemas open, to have another script. But it was really tricky, and all I had was the opening scene of the film, which I'd had in my head for a long time. So this fishing boat being discovered in the harbour 30 years after it'd been lost at sea. I'd had that idea in my head for a long time. I don't know where it came from, but I didn't have anywhere to go with it until I needed another idea. And I told Mary that idea, and she said, what about if the community are not entirely surprised that the boat has come back? And that was the key. It was like, that's really interesting. All right, this isn't a ghost ship movie, or this can be a ghost ship movie, but it can expand much more beyond the idea that I had in my head, which was probably just a scene or even a short film. And from there, we sort of fleshed out the story together. And it took a couple of days to sort of sit and think about it, but I realized that there was a story there. I had no idea what it was actually about. I didn't know what it was saying. I didn't know what the theme of it was, but there was certainly a story to hang a theme off at that point, and that's when I started writing it.
Yeah, great. This film feels it opens up a bit. It's a little bit larger in scale, but also you're working with the same people like Mary. How does it feel different to you? I mean, how does it build upon what you've done before?
I think every film feels different, but it's quite difficult to know how it's different, because I now can't really remember much about the production of Bait or Enys Main. And actually, to be honest, not a lot about Rose Nevada, because the whole production of making Rose Nevada kind of gets recorded over with the experience of watching the finished film. But I think we managed to keep everything, the integrity of the way we work, entirely intact. We didn't compromise anything for the sake of the scale. We scaled the film up where we needed to scale it up. We didn't arbitrarily change things. So day to day, it was still me wandering around with a clockwork camera in my hand and a light meter around my neck and a bag of rolls of film. That, my day to day didn't change very much. I think production wise, Denzel Monk, the producer, worked on a completely different scale. I think his experience was totally different, and part of what he was doing was protecting the integrity of how I work. Obviously it was a bigger cast. It was working with actors I hadn't worked with before. We had a huge production design department, and partly was because we were shooting on a boat, and we had to build the interior of the boat in the studio. We had to build another couple of locations in the studio. So that meant the production design department was much bigger, the art department, and also it was a period drama, which is the scary thing. It was very early on I was told that I was making a period drama, even though it was only set in 1993. That was a terrifying moment. But yeah, a lot of things got scaled up, but we tried to keep the integrity of the way that I work as intact as possible.
Yeah, and in terms of the process, is it the same as what you did with Bait in terms of development of the film and everything, the way that you've done it through these three films?
It was the same as the way we did it on Enys Main. So because Bait was black and white, I hand processed every frame of the negative. So I spent 3 or 4 months in my studio hand processing every single frame. And then we post synced the dialogue. The actors came back and did the dialogue. We created the sound from scratch. Enys Main was exactly the same, but I didn't hand process it because it was a color negative. It's kind of harder to process because it's all very temperature dependent. So that was lab processed. And Rose of Nevada was exactly the same. So it was everything shot silently on 16mm on the clockwork camera. All of the rushes sent away to Kodak at Pinewood to be processed and then sent back as digital proxies that then I edit from. And then we get the actors back in one by one to record their dialogue and then create the soundscape and the soundtracks. I work with a supervising sound editor now, a guy called Ian Wilson, who lives near me. So we work very closely on the sound, and myself and Atlantic, which is the Cornish post-production company, Michael Todd there is the colorist who colors it. So through the post-production, there's kind of 3 of us who work on the post, and it was pretty much the same as Enys Main, just again scaled up, and then ultimately the film gets printed back to 35mm. The digital version of the film gets printed back to film. I think BFI have just taken possession of the brand new 35mm print, and that will premiere at the weekend at the BFI. So yeah, very much the same process. The outlier in a way is Bait, because it was black and white. I was able to hand process that, and I think in the future, if I shoot another black and white movie, I'll hand process it again, because I love the hand processing. It's just very, very complicated and very risky to hand process that much color footage in my little studio.
So I know you talk a lot about the way that you build the soundscape afterwards, but I think watching it again, these 2 films again last night, I was really particularly moved by the soundscape and how important it was. And it made me think a little bit about Jacques Tati, like Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, but in a little bit more ominous, obviously, way. So when you're building the soundscape and the edit, what are you thinking about, and what were you trying to accomplish with these 2 films, particularly Enys Main and Rose of Nevada?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you mentioned Jacques Tati, because the approach to sound and non-sync sound is the same between me and him, with very different end products. But that I find so much freedom from shooting silently and then creating the soundscape afterwards. And the reason I started doing that was because I wanted to shoot on 16mm, and the only camera I could get my hands on to shoot 16mm was a camera that would be very difficult to do sync sound with. So myself and Denzel begrudgingly said, right, we won't record any location sound. We've decided we're going to use this camera, which is great, but the downside is we can't record location sound. But very quickly we realized that was actually a huge bonus, because it means you can go into a location with no considerations about sound. We can go into the busiest place in the world and film a close-up of something where you can't see how busy everything is. And then, you put a sound of silence over it or a whistling wind, and suddenly you've turned the busiest place in the world into somewhere that's completely abandoned and isolated, which is a real shortcut in terms of production, design, or even just the logistics of shooting a film. So it makes the shoot so much easier. So in Rose of Nevada, for example, we filmed a lot of the harbor scenes, the close-up stuff, in quite a big harbor near me called Hale, where there's a huge Asda superstore just out of frame, and we shot in the middle of the school summer holidays, and so the sound of like people on holiday sort of shouting at their kids and cars and all of this kind of stuff was all there in the atmosphere, while we were shooting it. But it's not on the film, because as long as you don't show that stuff visually, it will never exist in the film. So it gives you this incredible freedom. I don't think many other productions could have gone in and filmed just next to a huge Asda and not had to have kind of shut them down, which has huge costs. And you also irritate people in the community by doing things like that. And I'm filming a lot of time in my own community, in Denzel's community. So that's a big priority, not to inconvenience people. And in Enys Main, we had the derelict cottage the isolated cottage on the island. Just to the left of that is a really busy working farm. So if we'd pan the camera another couple of meters left, there's a really busy working farm. If we'd look the other way, there's a very ancient standing stone, or 3 standing stones, where hundreds of people come every day to look at these stones. So there was this, where we were, there was so much noise in that landscape, but by not recording location sound, you can film in these places. That's the first benefit. The second benefit is you're starting creating the sound from absolute scratch. There's nothing there. So the starting point is, what do I want to hear? And then you just add in what you want to hear. You don't have to remove things. You don't have to repair damaged location sound. You just start from scratch, and you can build up an incredibly impressionistic soundtrack by adding individual elements, but then also removing individual elements, which is what those great filmmakers who were working with post-sync sound always did. It was another tool, rather than it being something that complemented the visuals. It's something that kind of elevates the visuals and also works above and beyond the visuals. And you, through sort of very specific sound design, you can turn a wide shot into a close-up by removing all of the layers of sound that you put in, and just leaving one sound that relates to one bit of the image. Suddenly the attention goes to that image, and you can really elevate the visuals and abstract the visuals through the way you use the sound impressionistically.
Yeah, and I'm also was really noting the silence in the film as well. As sometimes it's just completely silent, or with Enys main, all of the horror elements come from me for the sound, the eeriness of what's going on. So it's but with sound, there's the score as well, and you've scored both films, I believe. With Enys main, it feels a bit more sparse, and Rose and Havana feels a little more haunting and rhythmic. Can you talk about your process of incorporating the score within the soundscape as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably better to comment it on me, because you've got some distance on it. Whereas I'm like, whatever anybody says about the score, I'm kind of surprised, because it's news to me, because I just, so involved in the production of it, and any element of the film that's kind of pulled out for interrogation is just sort of by other people is really interesting. So I kind of thought, I thought there was a lot of score in Enys main, but I suppose it was because it was relative, because there was so much kind of silence in the film, and it was a softer score. With this one, I wanted things to be a bit more abrasive, so I like the score and the sound design to work together. I never want the score to sit on top of the sound design, and because I'm making both of them from scratch at the same time, they kind of become the same thing, really. So I was pulling out all of the score to give to Invader Records, who were putting the soundtrack album out, and there were some bits that I was taking out, and I was thinking, I don't know whether that's sound design or whether it's score, because it's sort of so unmusical bits of the score that I was thinking it was sound design, or there's some bits of the sound design that are so rhythmic I was thinking they were score. So I like the way it overlaps. I remember when Ian was in Wilson was mixing the film with me, I kept asking him to lower the score in the mix, to bury it below the sound design at times, especially with bits on the boat, where the really important bit for me was the kind of the sound of the metal impacts and the chains and the warps and the ropes and the block and the winch and everything on the deck of the boat. That was the important stuff for me, which was kind of the naturalistic sound. And I didn't want the score to be above that. And I kept saying, can you bring the score down in the mix? And he said to me then, he'd never worked with a composer, which was effectively me. He'd never worked with a composer who was constantly asking for the score to be lower in the mix. But it's good. I just see this. One, I'm a little bit shy about being thought of as a composer anyway, because I'm not really a musician. But also, I just want the score to serve the sound design rather than being sat on top of it. So it'll be interesting to listen to the score when it's released on record, to see if it really changes and transforms without a lot of that other sound design within it.
I mean, has that been part of your process the whole time, to make scores with your films, or is it just is it throughout your whole career?
No, I fell into it accidentally. I made some drones to put into bait during the rough cut, because there was, like I say, we start with no sound at all. So I was in the process of adding in the naturalistic sound into Bait, thinking there would be no score, because I thought I wanted that social realism element to be kind of amplified by there not being any artificial music in the film. But there were bits where I had to spend hours doing all the footsteps and all the clothes rustles and all of this kind of Foley stuff. And it was so much hard work and so boring that I just thought, I'm going to create a few drones just to fill some empty spaces in the soundtrack while I'm working on the rough cut. But myself and Kate Byers and Lynn Waite, the two producers of Bait, sort of fell in love with the drones and what they did within the film. So we left them in, and I actually created more of them. And on Bait, I didn't give myself a credit for the score. I was sort of too embarrassed because I'd already written, directed, shot it, edited it, and sound designed it. I thought, I can't be the composer as well. People will think, who's this total egomaniac? So although I'd done the music, I didn't credit myself on the credits. But Jeff Barrow at Invader and Reg at Invader, who run that label, they saw Bait, and Reg got in contact with me and said, we want to put the score out, as a record. And I said, oh, that's great. And they said, who did it? Because there's no name on the roller. And I said, I did it. And they said, well, we really love it, we want to put it out. And so from then, that gave me the confidence to think, right, well, I'll do the score on Enys Main. So it's become something that I do, like I say, I don't compartmentalize it. I just think of it as part of the sound design, and I'm quite happy being a sound designer on my films. I love doing the sound design in the same way that I love operating the camera and I love editing. So if I can put music composition within, think of it as part of sound design, then I'm not quite so self-conscious about doing the music on my own films, because that does sometimes feel like one thing too many in terms of the optics of how I work.
Yeah, and it does feel so holistic, like how you do it. So yeah, it's fantastic. Enys Main originally was described, at least I guess in the marketing, as kind of a lost Cornish folk horror, and obviously it feels very connected to folk traditions. We're running your two films as part of a larger festival on folk horror, and I feel like there's something in the landscape that feels quite unsettling in both of these films, but not in a traditional horror way. And I wondered where this inspiration comes from you. Where are there TV or film horror that you sort of liked or took inspiration from, or was this completely just instinctually like that way?
No, I think there's loads of inspiration in there from the stuff I've seen in the past. I think a lot of it, I was talking about this last night in the Q&A here in Manchester, where we used a clip of The Dead Zone, David Cronenberg's The Dead Zone in Rose of Nevada, and somebody asked me why I used it, and I said that film stayed with me from when I was a kid. I watched it when I was far too young. I remember I watched it in the first house we lived in, and we moved when I was 11, so I must have been under 11 when I watched that film. And it was on Christmas Eve, really late, like the midnight movie on Christmas Eve. And because it was Christmas Eve, my mum let me stay up, and I watched The Dead Zone. And I watched it. I remember it, I hated every second of it, watching it. It kind of, in my memory, kind of really ruined that Christmas because I was so traumatized by it. And then I sort of buried it until I saw it a few years ago, and it all came back to me. And suddenly there was so much stuff in that film. There's stuff that I think about all the time, whether it's themes or whether it's individual shots. And I thought, oh, wow, I wonder whether I totally buried that because it traumatized me so much. And there's been other instances of that where I've seen old like public information films that have that we were all shown when we were kids that are really, really terrifying. You know, like some of the greatest British horror films of all time are the public information films. So I think all of that's in there. So they're not sort of conscious influences, but I think I just grew up in that time of a lot of great British TV that was done very cheaply, very quick, without much resources, and so used the sort of ingenuity and the imagination of the filmmakers in a way that I think the way we work, we're forced to do that as well, because we don't quite have enough time, money, or resources to do it. And although I would never ask for less time, money, and resources, I think the fact that we haven't quite got enough most of the time is what it leads us to tap into bits of our imagination and ingenuity that I don't think we would if we had endless money and resources and time. And I think that's a very British film industry kind of trope. So I try not to think too consciously about influences, because there's a risk you can borrow stuff or homage stuff, as I say, if I have realized I've borrowed something. There's like a couple of shots in Enys, Maine that are lifted from Haunters of the Deep, which was a Children's Film Foundation film from the early 80s that I realize I now have to call a homage because they're very similar. But but I think the influence comes from all around, really. I think that there's a history, that sort of folk horror history, and again, I think it's a very Cornish thing that the past and the present and the future are all mixed together, and the past is certainly always with us. And I think that it might be, so Denzel was talking about this to me the other day, and his theory is it's the Celtic nations, the Celtic nations being defeated nations, makes them very distinct. Because if you've been defeated as a nation, you become quite, in some ways, preoccupied by the past, which sounds like a negative thing, but I think it's a really important thing, that the ghosts are all around you. And the ghosts are all around you to remind you of the past. Because if you don't understand your past, it's very difficult to sort of make sense of the present and plan any kind of future. So I think the defeated nations have that. Defeated nation feels very like a very negative thing to say, but I think that kind of defeat to a superior neighbor quite often gives you a very strong identity, because what you're left with, you hold on to very tight. It becomes incredibly valuable and is always linked to the past. And it's dangerous if you're always looking backwards. But if you've got a link to the past in context of where you want to go in the future, I think that becomes a real asset. And I think quite often that's to do with horror, and not horror. I mean, horror is a very difficult thing to define as a cinematic genre, and everybody has their own idea of what horror is when you say that word. But horror or ghost stories, I'm very interested in ghost stories, because the ghosts are all around us.
Right.
And I don't think that is a horrific thing. It can be an unsettling thing, but it can be a very positive and informative thing. And that's what I still don't understand it. Every day I learn more about who I am based on where I come from. And it informs me, not of the work I'm going to do, but it informs me what the work I've already made means. Because, you don't really know everything that you're doing, what you're saying when you're making a film, and quite often it's this stage of the process where I'm talking about the films and listening to audiences' reactions to the film that I realize what we've made.
And as you said, this kind of has been marketed as a trilogy, but it does sound like, from what I've heard from your other interviews, that your next work is very much not related to that place anymore. You're going to go to the States to do a film. So how are you? I mean, how is that approach? How are you approaching that next step in your career?
I mean, I would describe all four of the films that I've got in development at the moment. I would say they're all Cornish. One is an American road movie, but very much with a Cornish protagonist, set in the 1970s, and it links into the Cornish diaspora of where the Cornish went and spread around the world. So it's set between upstate New York and Wisconsin. And I've just been in America doing that road trip, and actually traveled through the area where my family, a few generations, went, left West Penwith and went to Ohio to mine, to work in the mines, and ended up coming back generations later. So it's still an American road movie, but it's really got Cornish roots. I'm hoping to do a book adaptation, which is very much set in Cornwall. That's kind of in the works at the moment. I'm doing another film working with another writer, which is a kind of huge sprawling biopic set between Cornwall and Hollywood. And then the fourth thing I'm doing is something that isn't set in Cornwall. It's set in England, but it will be entirely made in Cornwall. So that, I think that's the one that's maybe the least Cornish one, but that's the one we'll be making entirely in Cornwall. So yeah, I'm not going far, and this probably wouldn't be a discussion unless we were thinking of the first three as a trilogy, which again was mentioned to me by somebody, a friend of mine from the BFI who was at the Venice world premiere, who said to me after the screening, you've made the Cornish trilogy. And I hadn't thought of like it that at all, but it's great because, like I say, it feels like the end of something, which isn't a negative, because the end of something is always followed by the beginning of something. And I'm sort of really excited about getting the trilogy, completing the trilogy, and then starting the next body of films.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us, and we're really excited to share your films as part of our outdoor program this weekend at Enys. So thanks again.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for including them.
So that wraps up our show. 3 very good films, we think, are mostly good films. And yeah, I was just apart from my massive plug of our Fiends and the Furrows film festival that's coming up next weekend. What else are you guys looking forward to seeing in the film theaters?
Mother Mary, I'm excited for the new David Lowery film. The trailer came out, which I didn't actually watch, but I'm just excited because I love David Lowery. It's Anne Hathaway and Michaela Cole, and it's kind of like Vox Lux energy of like lady pop star and emotional psychosexual tribulations. I'm down. Excited. Looks cool. And yeah, that's kind of the only thing. And as I said before, and Digger, the new Inarritu film, that's coming out in October. So that's ages away. But it's just went on to CinemaCon and people were like really hyped for it. Apparently it looks awesome. So I'm excited for that. Those are my two films of the year for me.
I was going to say I saw the trailer for Mother Mary and was like much more interested in that Anne Hathaway film than The Devil Wears Prada 2.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, that looks better than Devil Wears Prada for sure.
No, but I'm a Devil Wears Prada
Me
comfort.
too.
Like
Me too,
it's my Christmas movie of choice, as in it's always on during Christmas time, and I like the Paris scene. But I don't
rewatched
think
it like last week and I love it. But yeah, the second
but
one.
I don't think I need a second version. And also Vogue right now just feels icky in general. But Kat, how about you? Anything you're looking forward to?
I don't think I have anything specific from the trailers that I've seen last time in the cinema. There's a few kind of interesting looking films, but nothing that I'm like dying to see. I did see that it was announced that there's which is in 2 years' time actually, but there's the Hunt for Gollum film that seems to be officially confirmed now with cast involved as well, so that might be interesting. And then Ian oh my god, what's his name? Ian
McKellen.
What's McKellen, right? That's right. He is in a film with Michaela. My God, Cole as well, and that looks semi-interesting. So yeah, might go and see that one, but nothing too.
Is it the Kristoffers?
Is it?
Yeah,
Maybe.
the Steven Soderbergh movie that's coming out.
Yes,
Yes,
think
that
that's the
looks
one.
good.
Yeah,
That looks cool.
Have you guys seen the trailer for The Odyssey? Just thinking of Scottish Christopher Nolan's latest.
I don't do Nolan anymore. After Tenet, I've given up. But hopefully it's good. I don't know.
Did you not watch Oppenheimer?
Nope. I'm not doing it anymore. I've given up on I've not enjoyed a single one of his films. I'm just tired. I'm tired of it. And I don't buy Matt Damon as
I was gonna say,
I don't buy it.
For some reason, I thought it was Zendaya's boyfriend that was the main guy, now husband.
Imagine.
But yeah, then I was like, turned to the person I was with and was like, the Odyssey is all a Matt Damon show? Like, is it really?
The Martian too, but now in ancient Greece.
I've not even heard of this, but I'm so gonna watch the trailer after.
Well,
Like a trailer
was
trailer, it's
filmed
a
in Scotland. It was filmed in like the Moray area of Scotland, but also it's Nolan's, exciting new film. Shot obviously on film. It's meant to be in cinemas. He's a champion of everything, film and cinema, which we love.
Yeah, yeah. And do you know what? I do love watching films that or like TV that is based in Scotland just for the sake of it. Like, yeah, I will give it that.
Yeah.
Re TV land. I am excited for Interview with the Vampire. Season 3, The Vampire Lestat. So watch out for that. I'm so pumped. I've never been more hyped for anything in my life. That is coming back June 7th. Watch out, people. People in my life, get warned. I will go crazy.
Wait,
Yeah, it
there's a
looks great.
TV series, Interview with the Vampire, that's been happening, and I didn't know about it.
Yes. So there's 2 seasons out, and they're amazing. The best TV ever. Probably my favorite TV show of all time. Really, really good. And now they've finished the Interview with the Vampire book, and now they're moving on to the second book of the series, which is The Vampire Lestat, and it's just Lestat as a rock star, and it looks incredible. Like, it looks really, really beautiful and good. And there's like original music by Daniel Hart, who does the music for David Lowery's films. And he's an incredible musician and composer. He did the music for both the previous seasons. So you've got enough time to watch season 1 and 2 before season 3 in June, because it's all on BBC iPlayer.
I don't know how I felt about Interview with the Vampire 1, although I was a huge Brad Pitt fan back then. So,
So the TV show is like a million times better than the movie. I loved the movie. I loved the book. I love the movie. I'm a huge Interview with the Vampire Anne Rice fan, but the TV show is like chef's kiss, actually, like literature. It's like proper prestige TV. It's really good.
Okay.
It's also very gay, which is fantastic.
Well, I would say, like,
For me.
No, but it definitely, for like Interview with the Vampire 1, feels very sort of, no.
It
like,
is very gay.
yeah.
The movie's very gay, but the show is like
long hair, long blonde hair on the, like.
So Lestat is actually the Lestat is got long hair. Louis, they changed him he's a black man now, and it's like they've kind of changed the time period, so that's later. So like it changes the dynamics a lot more. And
is there like a Lolita-ish character in it as well, or no?
There's Claudia, who's like a young woman, a young girl who they turn into a vampire. So there's like all these like ethical, moral issues around a child vampire, and they deal with them a lot more on the show than they did in the movie. Although Kirsten Dunst is iconic, and we love her in the movie.
She is iconic, but I just felt like that was like the Natalie Portman, Kirsten Dunst, like too young.
Very different. It's very different, but it's like a they deal with it appropriately. Like, it's the point of it to discuss it, but it's really good. No, I don't want to take up too much time on this podcast talking about Interview with the Vampire, because I could go on about it for about 5 hours, but the season 3 is coming out, and I'm excited, and that's
I think prestige television fits here as well, so all right, well, thank you so much for being part of the show, and looking forward to seeing you all at the festival and also around town and in cinemas around Edinburgh and in a future episode. So thanks again.
Thanks,
Samantha. Okay.